Hey, and welcome to WatchMinded. Usually we build custom watches here, like this one, or this, or this. But tell me, how many times have you actually been to a watch museum? Yeah, that's what I thought. So today, let's do something different. I'm taking you on a winter holiday journey to Schaffhausen, Switzerland. We'll visit the IWC Museum, take a close look at some outstanding timepieces, uncover a few lesser-known stories from watchmaking history, get inspired for our next custom builds, and soak in the Swiss winter vibe. The IWC company and the museum are located here in the small Swiss city of Schaffhausen, and this is important. IWC is the most significant watch manufacturer in the German-speaking part of Switzerland, while most of the other famous Swiss watch brands grew in the French-speaking regions, around Geneva and the Jura Mountains. You can even find the name of the city on the IWC logo, Schaffhausen. And in my opinion, this was also a way to differentiate themselves. We are Swiss-made, but we are not part of the traditional Swiss watchmaking system. We are different. IWC was founded in 1868 by an American entrepreneur, Florentine Ariosto Jones. He wanted to combine Swiss watchmaking skills with American industrial know-how and create a centralized production with standardized parts and repeatable quality. And Schaffhausen was chosen not only because Switzerland offered skilled and relatively affordable labor at the time, but because of this, the Rhine River. In the 19th century, there was no electricity. The river provided cheap and reliable hydropower, allowing machines to run continuously and production to scale. A water turbine powered a main rotating shaft. From there, energy was distributed through long line shafts, belts, pulleys, and gear reductions. Each workstation could mechanically engage or disengage power when needed. And the Rhine was not only a source of energy, it was also a transport route. And by the way, if you ever visit Schaffhausen, make sure to see the Rhine Falls, the largest waterfall in Europe. It's just 3 kilometers from the IWC Museum and the city center, and it really lets you feel the raw power that shaped this place. I couldn't wait to visit this museum. IWC is one of my favorite watch brands, and since this was the very first watch museum I've ever visited, I was expecting something special. And to be honest, my expectations were met. The museum feels modern and premium. At the entrance, you receive headphones and a tablet with navigation and an audio guide. The rooms are finished with wood, leather, and glass. Stylish, calm, and very well thought out. But that's just the cover. Let's move to the core. Behind these beautiful watches, what really interested me was the story of how watches and their purpose changed over time. At first, watches were extremely rare luxury objects, with almost zero accessibility. Only kings and nobility could afford them. By the time IWC was founded, during the Industrial Revolution, that started to change. Watches became accessible to the upper middle class, to professionals who depended on accuracy, scientists, railway workers, engineers. This industrial way of thinking shaped IWC's DNA. They didn't build watches as jewelry first. They built them as engineering-driven instruments. That's why, among classic pocket watches, the Weber appeared, one of the very first watches with a digital display. Jumping hours and minutes shown with digits, not hands. An extremely radical idea for the 19th century. And interestingly, digital mechanical watches still exist today. A Lange und Söhne has the Zeitwerk, Cartier created the Tank à Guichet, and IWC even made a modern interpretation of the Weber. But these watches are rare and cost tens of thousands of dollars. One of the more affordable modern jump hour watches is probably the Christopher Ward C1 jump hour. But let's get back to the museum and to innovation. In the 20th century, watches became critical professional tools. With the rise of electrical engineering, magnetic fields became a serious enemy of mechanical watches. As early as 1890, IWC produced anti-magnetic pocket watches for the electric trams in Berlin. and in 1954, they introduced their first anti-magnetic automatic wristwatch for civil use, the Ingenieur. Even earlier, in 1936, IWC helped define the pilot watch category, with no fashion, just pure function. At a time when pilots relied on their watches not just to tell time, but to navigate and estimate fuel consumption, with large dials, maximum legibility, rotating bezels, and anti-magnetic protection. Later, IWC entered the world of professional dive watches, again with engineering-first solutions. And in 1985, one of the most important watches in IWC's history was introduced, the Da Vinci Perpetual Calendar. A perpetual calendar is a purely mechanical system that remembers the irregular calendar, all driven by gears, levers, and cams, without electronics. And remarkably, all adjustments can be made using just the crown. Right next to the museum, there's an IWC boutique where you can see modern watches in person, including perpetual calendars. And speaking of inspiration, this was the most expensive watch in the boutique that day, a hand-wound Portugueser with a tourbillon and day and night complication. After the museum, I walked into the city center, already dressed for the winter holidays, and I kept thinking about how the role of watches has changed. They started as rare luxury objects, then became essential professional tools, then something everyone needed, simply to know the time. And today, watches don't have just one meaning anymore. For some, they're about craftsmanship. For others, history, design, memories, milestones. And for me, building a watch is just one way to connect with all of that. Because whether you buy a watch or build one yourself, what really matters is the story behind it.